President Biden is in Lithuania, meeting with NATO leaders. He praised Turkey's decision to back Sweden's bid to join the alliance and called the expansion of NATO, quote, consequential, adding the countries would continue to stay united. Meanwhile, back here at home in Georgia, a grand jury was selected in the Fulton County investigation into Trump's attempts to overturn the 2020 election. They will consider charges against the former president. But we begin in Vilnius, Lithuania, and that's where we find CBS News chief White House correspondent Nancy Cordes joining us now, traveling with the president there. Nancy, good to see you. Thanks for being here. Let's talk about this expected meeting between President Biden and President Zelenskyy of Ukraine. I think everybody's looking at that meeting tomorrow. I know that there have been a lot of questions about Ukraine potentially joining NATO and some heated responses from the Ukrainian president. I want to play a little bit from your interview that you had with a senior administration official about Ukraine's potential entrance into NATO.
There's not agreement within the alliance about whether it would be a good idea to have a country join that's in the middle of a hot war, because the instant they do that, NATO, too, would be in that conflict.
So, Nancy, if you could kind of give us a sense of what potentially any sort of timeline looks like and what this means potentially for Biden and Zelenskyy meeting tomorrow.
Right. Well, that's what has Volodymyr Zelenskyy so frustrated right now, Caitlin, is that there is no timeline. NATO leaders are not willing to set out any kind of timetable for Ukraine joining NATO. They are just saying that Ukraine's future is in NATO, that it will be a NATO member at some point, as long as it meets these conditions when it comes to democracy, when it comes to security, sometime after the war is over. And Zelenskyy wants more. He wants a timetable. He wants more specifics. And he hopes to get more of those specifics when he sits down with President Biden here in Vilnius on Wednesday. And he'll also be meeting with a whole array of NATO leaders. But beyond that, he's likely to discuss the types of things that he always talks about with President Biden, how the counteroffensive is going against Russia in their bid to retake Ukrainian territory, and what kinds of security needs are still not being met. Now, here in Vilnius, various NATO countries have been stepping up to provide new assistance. France, for example, is offering new long-range missiles. Germany is offering armored vehicles and tanks. And just today, a consortium of 11 nations announced that they were going to be, for the first time, training Ukrainian pilots on American-made F-16s. That's something that Ukraine has been seeking for quite some time. So the nations here are stepping up. They just aren't giving Ukraine what it wants the most, which is NATO membership and the security that comes along with it.
Right. It's really interesting that the member that's not in NATO is really kind of center stage here at this summit. It also comes, of course, as NATO is expected to be expanded now that the deal yesterday was announced that Turkey would allow Sweden to move forward with joining NATO eventually. What's been the response to that deal? It does seem like Turkey ended up getting a good amount out of this.
Turkey got a lot out of it because it had specific reforms that it wanted Sweden to make in order to grant its support for Sweden's accession to NATO. It also wanted some promises about being able to purchase F-16s itself from the United States, and it looks like that is now going to go forward as well. So everyone gets what they want. Sweden gets to join NATO. NATO gets a big, wealthy Nordic country with a strong navy in the alliance, along with Norway, which joined a few months ago. And what that means is that NATO has now expanded to to encompass the Baltic Sea. And these Nordic countries have submarines. They have ships patrolling the Baltic. That's something that was kind of a weak spot for NATO before, but it isn't anymore. And so there's an air of celebration here because NATO leaders weren't sure whether they were going to be able to announce Sweden joining the alliance, becoming the 32nd nation at this summit. And now, thanks to that breakthrough yesterday, they are able to do so, and they're very happy about it.
Yes, of course, and with Finland also joining the alliance where the president is headed later this week. And we will follow you and all of it there. Nancy, thank you so much for your time and reporting.
You're welcome.